Team Spirit able to disengage after that Wrath of Nature rooted them all, which means Yatoro wants to go back.
He's got an opening here. Looks for it with the Chronosphere. They were so grouped up on Gaming Gladiators, but he doesn't have the vision. He's now been grabbed. They actually have that AoE. The calling goes out. He's on the other side. He actually gets away. Thanks well. Time Walk undoes so much of the damage. And now Gaming Gladiators have to play it a little bit slow. Have to respect that Soulbind. They cleanse themselves of the ghost. That silence is now gone. The Soulbind is away. Here's Yatoro. He's still waiting for his opportunity to get that couple. Got 2, 3. 1 in the back, 2 in the front. And that's going to be the Aegis down for the board, like a second life for both him and...
Hello, it's Torte de Lini. When it comes to succeeding with Faceless Void, it's about understanding your Chronosphere. When to use it in a fight, who are your key targets, who are your blockers, and really how to build enough power to really take advantage or be effective with it. Chronosphere has always been one of the best abilities in Dota 2, especially late game, where entrapping your opponents can lead to huge comebacks and victories. All the items that Faceless Void builds is seeking to maximize his time during Chronosphere and his output with Time Lock. Whether that's an attack speed or even more damage or even just defensive items to prevent him from being disabled during such a crucial moment in a fight. Faceless Void is especially strong because he deals good physical and magical damage thanks to Time Lock and scales decently throughout the game, making his Chronosphere a real threat throughout. He's a stable carry hero to pick that combos well with a lot of other allies and abilities, and is probably one of the best late game carries in the game. Think about picking Faceless Void against hard to catch heroes like Ember Spirit or Storm Spirit or Meepo, and be wary of heroes that can outlast your Chronosphere like Wraith King, Abaddon, as well as heroes that can easily prevent you from fulfilling your responsibilities during your ultimate. Annoyances like Winter Wyvern and her Winter's Curse, and Vengeful Spirit's Nether Swap are the two I'm immediately thinking of. Faceless Void is also heavily reliant on items, and so his farming cannot be interrupted. So heroes like Treant Protector, Clinks, and other ganking heroes that prevent our favorite hero Faceless Void from escaping with Time Walk is kind of scary to play against. Laning stage. We start the laning stage with a Tango and some Iron Branches for stats, Circlet and Slippers of Agility to make Wraith Band and Quelling Blade to help with your last hitting early on. If you're dealing with an especially magic spammy lane like against like a Bristleback, maybe consider a Magic Stick instead of Slippers of Agility. Now laning with Faceless Void always has been something that's pretty stable to play with. Thanks to Time Walk, the hero never really feels threatened unless you're up against enemies that deal periodic damage like Viper, who can chip away at your health. These kind of heroes kind of force you in a conundrum where if you use Time Walk to reverse the damage, it would put you in a position to get nuked by magic spells. Against probably most other harassment, your ability to Time Walk back the damage is especially important, and probably one of the reasons why Faceless Void is a very stable early game laner for position 1 carries at least. Your goal during this stage is to focus on last hitting, as well as denying your opponent. If your opponent is kind of sitting near the wave as a melee hero, feel free to hit him a couple of times in hopes that your Time Lock occurs and deals additional damage to them. If your laning is especially difficult or aggressive, feel free to leave the lane and pick up an early Morbid Mask. Your first two major items are Mask of Madness and Maelstrom. These two items allow you to farm the jungle and creep wave quickly, and it also provides you your first attack speed item to gank foes with your Chronosphere. With the Morbid Mask, you can start immediately taking nearby jungle camps when your safe lane is pushed in and once you have the Mask of Madness. You can comfortably start grabbing some nearby kills with your Chronosphere with a great support. You might even be able to do it honestly before Mask of Madness with a good support, but you have to use kind of your discretion to determine if someone is killable or not so much. In the early game, it's okay to use your Chronosphere for one enemy target if it means easy gold and a convenient kill. Now don't waste too much time looking to use your Chronosphere when you could be using that time to farm. You have to kind of determine when and where you can actually pull it off without it being a huge delay in getting those necessary items. When farming the jungle, make sure to have your power tread set to agility, but activating your Mask of Madness, set it to intelligence to mitigate the cost of using that item regularly. Over time, Mask of Madness will sap your mana, so it is important to manage it by changing your boots to intelligence for the slightly extra larger mana pool. This is especially important after you start using Time Walk to jump from one jungle camp to the other to be really efficient when farming. Now in terms of skill build, you usually want to max your Time Lock to increase your farming potential throughout the early game. You can max out Time Walk if you find yourself getting harassed a lot, but be warned that your mana pool will severely limit how many times you can Time Walk back any damage you take. Before level 6, we grab 1 point in Time Walk to reverse any damage taken in the lane, like we talked about, and 1 point in Time Dilation to utilize your mana, and it's also kind of a great slow against harassing supports who spam spells against you. Time Dilation also allows you and your support to follow up and deal massive damage to them back as they try to flee. With the right ally lineup, you can probably actually maybe snag a kill with your combined debuffs and slows. Mid game. Your mid game is similar to your early game. When Chronosphere is up, you fight. When it is down, you choose to farm, and it would help if you had stacked jungle camps from your allies to make your farm all the more faster. With Maelstrom and Mask of Madness, you are hastening your farm even further, while also building towards additional output from your attack speed when you choose to fight with Chronosphere. Generally, your goal on when to use Chronosphere is when your team is either defending against an attack, and you can easily teleport to defend, or your team is preparing to smoke and knows exactly where the enemy team is. You don't want to waste time looking for a kill with Chronosphere if it seriously stalls your pace of farming. Faceless Void is not really that fast of a farmer, but he needs a lot of items to succeed into the late game. So you need to balance out your time, ironically enough, or pun intended, to make sure that you can reach all your itemizations on time. Now, speaking of itemization, Black King Bar is a very common pickup for the hero, as it allows you to physically attack enemies within your Chronosphere without fear of getting stunned or disabled. Mjolnir is a natural pickup for Faceless Void because it gives them more attack speed, which means more time lock. Items like Manta Style can be great for additional dispel, like against, silences, but also provides great damage inside the Chronosphere, even if the illusions can't proc time lock. When it comes to using your Chronosphere, you're aiming to kill priority targets that can range from rivaling carries, or even heroes that can easily disrupt you without your BKB, or heroes that have abilities that stall you during Chronosphere and go through BKB, like we talked about Winter Wyvern and Winter's Curse, or how about Enigma's Black Hole. So sometimes it makes more sense for you to counter initiate with Chronosphere rather than be the first one into a fight, knowing those high valued interrupting spells have already been exhausted. Using your Chronosphere for one hero and a kill is not really an issue. Just make sure it's the right hero and that you're not behind on your item timings. There's no point in really forcing a fight with your Chronosphere if you can't actually kill an enemy without being stunned or interrupted by any enemies outside your Chronosphere. You're the carry, so focus on what you need to succeed, not when you're needed if you can't actually succeed with it. Your spell combination is simple. Use Time Walk to initiate on your enemy and cast Chronosphere in a way where it grabs as many enemies as it can, but also avoids ensnaring your allies. If you have Black King Bar, be sure to use it before jumping in, so opponents cannot prevent you from casting Chronosphere as a follow-up. Now, within the Chronosphere, pop your Mask of Madness and go to town on your targets, hoping for Time Lock to stun and deal additional damage. When you know your Chronosphere is about to run out, you cast Time Dilation for additional damage, slow to prevent them from escaping, and you stall any abilities that are on cooldown. If need be, you can use Time Walk to either stay on top of an enemy, or to flee, or to reverse any damage you may have incurred post Chronosphere. Your skill build is also very simple. You should max Time Walk second to help you escape from gangs, jump around different jungle camps, and it also increases your range as you'll need this to get the jump on enemies from afar and out of sight. If you need even more range, Ag Shard is a good situational item that enhances your Time Walk's range, but also allows you to do those fake initiations to cause enemies to panic and make a mistake. For your talents, we pick up Time Walk back duration talent, as well as the Time Lock damage at level 15 and 16. Now, the reason we pick up our level 10 talent later is because we honestly haven't really leveled up Time Walk enough, and it would make more sense to do that first. The Time Lock damage goes along with your initial goal we talked about, which is to build up attack speed to incur more bashes. So more bash damage only enables that. Late game. Late game, your items are really going to determine your success in team fights during Chronosphere. No matter what, your final item should usually be honestly a Refresher Orb, because being able to reset your Black King Bar, Time Walk, and more importantly your Chronosphere really means that you can sway late game fights in your team's favor. 2 Chronosphere means you can either choose to hold down enemy carries to spend extra time taking them down, or to target a lot of ranged supports and heroes that you typically couldn't get in the first Chronosphere, and to eventually push fights to become a 5 versus 2 or 3 enemy lineup that are usually left over after your successful Chronospheres. Just make sure you activate Refresher Orb before your first Chronosphere runs out, so you can chain the 2 Chronospheres and Black King bars back to back. Now, other major items is Butterfly, which again gives Faceless Void great attack speed and damage since he is an agility hero, and some evasion to be able to survive against other physical carries. I also think Disperser, which gives Faceless Void speed and damage, but also another dispel and movement speed, as enemy teams are going to start kind of seeking you out to disable you continuously in fights. This gives a little bit of more wiggle room on when you need to use your Time Walk. Now, other situational items can include like Satanic to beef up Faceless Void, and to use the Morbid Mask from your Mask of Madness when disassembling. Eye of Skadi is also pretty good to punish rivaling carries and reduce health regen against beefy boys, and maybe you could even pick up an MKB versus evasive heroes. In terms of talents, the extra attack speed during Chronosphere is really the only logical choice at level 20, and level 25 has a really cool old school Faceless Void ability called 20% Backtrack. And what that means is that any damage you receive has a 20% chance to be reversed automatically, which makes playing against Faceless Void late game a full-blown nightmare for enemies. The hero can evade physical attacks with Butterfly, has a Time Walk to reverse any damage he does take, and now at 25, he may have a chance to backtrack any damage too. Now that said, if dealing with especially long-range enemy heroes or lineups that play really spread out, the larger Chronosphere AoE talent can actually make a lot of sense to consider. Now don't forget, Nullifier can be worthwhile against Ghost Scepter, Aeon Disc, Glimmer, or Yules. Very common items to pick up against Faceless Void. That should be a good baseline on how to play, build, and win as Faceless Void. But before you go, here are some final tips courtesy from howdoiplay.com. Now, 1, tread switching is especially important to utilize on Void, so Time Walk restores flat HP, so you actually stand to benefit a lot by switching your boots to Intelligence for the mana, going back to Strength and Agility after rewinding the damage. Number 2, Time Dilation makes Void really annoying against heroes with low cooldown or combo spells. So heroes like we talked about, Bristleback, Timbersaw absolutely hates Time Dilation, Invoker or Weaver are heroes that Void really likes to use Time Dilation against. And lastly, if you didn't know already, Chronosphere reveals invisible units. So pretty good against Riki or Bounty Hunter or just a common support player using their Glimmer Cape. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, as well as requests for which hero tutorials you'd like to see next. I'll be reading all your comments and questions for feedback as well, and additional great tips. So if you guys leave a really cool comment, and those watching this video, if you see a heart on a comment, it's usually a helpful tip to play the hero better, hopefully.